Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight Series, episode 57. Today I'm here with Kelly Goodell from Kelly Goodell, LLC, and we are hanging out in her awesome space here. Hi Kelly, how are you doing?
I'm good, Terrace. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, and I'm glad we got to do this here in your space. So,
Me too.
as always, we start out with a little bit of background, a little bit of bio, and that kind of wraps right into this place. So let's hear it. What brought you to Main Street? Why are we here?
So, I opened this business about a year ago,
Okay.
in May, in the middle of the pandemic.
Fun.
And I quickly discovered that with client work, I needed someplace to meet with people. And so I started with a little cubby across the hall here, kind of off of a conference room.
Sure.
And then this spot became available in January. And
Oh.
so I moved in here and, it was brown and cream before and you know.
Gotta love brown and cream. Those
Right,
are-
so
yeah.
we did a lot of fancy schmancy and
Yeah.
spruced it up.
Well, it looks great.
Thanks.
Yeah, brown and cream just makes me think of 1992 for some reason, like
Yeah.
dentist office, you know?
Yes,
So, yeah, I like what you've done with the place for sure.
thank you. And I was very intentional when I got everything put together that I did some energy work, which is one of the things that I do,
Mhm.
and put intention into the space for it to be a space of growth and healing and a safe space for people to be able to do those things. So that was really important.
Well, I know I felt relaxed the minute I walked in here, so
Great.
that's good.
Good. It worked.
Good. All right, great. So let's dive into what we're using this space for. What are the things, what are you offering at Kelly Goodell, LLC?
So what I do, I have several tools that I use to do this. But basically what I do is I work with people's bodies and their nervous systems to help them heal and resolve trauma.
Okay.
And we also do some work with energy and kind of mapping out how you use your energy so you can use it the way you want.
Mm.
And then we do some work, once you kind of get those building blocks put in place, we can really focus on your unique path for growth and evolution in this lifetime.
Okay, that sounds complicated
Right.
and kind of fun, and
Yes.
I bet very enlightening. So, how are you doing that?
The different types of tools that I use are among many other things, but I use 4 primary tools to work in those arenas. One of them is Somatic Experiencing,
Okay.
one of them is astrology, one of them is energy mapping, and I'm also a physical medium.
Okay.
And so,
Let's start with number
ask
one.
me, ask me, what does all that mean?
Yeah, let's go with the first one.
So, Somatic Experiencing is a type of therapy that works with the nervous system.
Okay.
The premise is that when you go through a traumatic event or have a traumatic kind of period of time in your life, that you have an interrupted nervous system response. That's what causes the trauma, and it holds in your body. So you have this, let's say you're in a car accident,
Sure.
you're hyper aroused, you're hyper vigilant, your
Yeah.
adrenaline and cortisol is all up, and you have no way to dispel that energy
Okay.
right after the car accident because you're so
Yeah.
discombobulated and all of that, right?
I love that word. Sorry, go ahead.
Good.
Yes.
So, working with Somatic Experiencing is working to get small releases, which is called titrating, of that energy that was blocked up
Right.
from that instance, right?
Sure.
So as we do that, we do a lot of things with sensation in the body, images, kind of emotions, and all of that kind of stuff to help titrate or slowly release that energy so that you can get your nervous system back to a kind of base level
Sure.
and you're not in that hyper run. The reason you want to do that is because, as you might imagine, having that nervous system interruption
Sure.
in your body can cause physical issues.
I would imagine.
And so for me, that's where the physical mediumship comes in. I actually connect with people's bodies. I feel the things
Mm-hmm.
in their body,
Right.
that places that they are holding.
So I was actually going to ask that.
Yeah.
Is it more of a throughout the entire body that it's being held like dispersed evenly? Do people
No.
tend to hold things in specific places?
Yes.
do those places coincide with specific types of trauma, or is
Yes.
it just by person? Or is it more like, a physical thing, you get in an accident, you screw this up, do you hold it right there?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
So typically and the reason I started doing the Somatic Experiencing training program is because I was connecting physically with people, and once we would talk about it, it would be some traumatic event, like they would have had a surgery,
Right.
or they had a fall, or they were punched, or they had, some
Sure.
sort of, they were emotionally abused. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and I felt like it was my responsibility to understand how to help people move through that. And the only way I could do that was to be trauma informed.
So do you find that it sounds like, from what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like it's not sort of a one and done type thing either. Like this type of trauma, this interruption to the nervous system, as you said, it's kind of like small releases over time by working on it and whatnot. Does it tend to be different spots for each person, like all the time? Like, okay, we've got something sort of in this area, and you get rid of that, and then you move on to a different spot, or do people tend to, like, one person's always got it in that one spot?
So it's typically a spot that people kind of, as we do the work, people identify.
That this is where I hold that.
This is where I hold whatever it is. The thing I like about Somatic Experiencing is, you don't have to go back into the trauma because we work in the body.
Okay.
Right? So there can be an issue, there can be an incident, there can be a period of time that was traumatic. And really what we're working on is how to release the energy in the nervous system. So we're not talking about the story
So
over
it's
and
not
over.
really revisiting it per
It's
se.
not.
Okay, see, now that's interesting, yeah, because that sort of sets it aside from what, people would often potentially do in a therapy or something to get over trauma or,
Yeah.
or
And that's not to say that that is not
Right.
of value, but that's just not what we're doing here.
understood.
And when I do a session, I like to do at least 5 sessions because I think you see amazing results. You can also see results after one,
Okay.
because once you have a release, it's permanent.
Okay.
Because you've released that little bit of
Sure.
that energy, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's really amazing stuff.
That's awesome.
And the reason, like I said, the reason I started with that is because when I would do astrology readings, when I do them, I connect with people in their body.
You started to see these things being held.
Yes, and so I would feel it, and then we talk about it, and when I do an astrology reading, the chart to me is an energy map.
Okay.
So it shows me where your concentrated amount of energy is based on different placements in the chart.
Okay.
It shows me where things are easy for you. It shows me where things are difficult for you, so that I can look at the chart and say, okay, here's where things are difficult. Let's take this energy that we know is easy for you, and let's figure out how to resource it so we can move around these obstacles.
Okay.
But the other thing that comes up in the chart is trauma.
All right.
And
that's where you started.
And that's where I was
getting
like,
the
oh, I better, because this stuff is not for the faint of heart. I mean, there's no soft
intense.
start up here.
Okay.
We hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I needed to be appropriately trained and, have my toolbox ready so that I could help people through this and be responsible.
I mean, that makes sense. It's got to be difficult to say, like, oh, I've got this one thing that I can do for you, and not acknowledge the fact that so many of these things are all connected together.
Right.
Speaking of so many of these things, you mentioned some other tools in your toolbox.
Right.
What was the second one you mentioned? I'm sorry.
So we talked about somatic experiencing.
Right.
We talked a little bit about astrology.
Yes.
I also do something called energy mapping.
Okay.
And that's really taking...
You sort of mentioned that too, as you said.
Yeah.
It's all sort of circles together.
It's all connected. And with energy mapping, we have conversation about where you are using your energy, consciously and unconsciously,
Okay.
where things are inappropriately pulling on that energy,
Okay.
and then creating a map forward for you to get some balance and integration with how you're using your energy.
And that kind of plays right off of the fact that when you do the astrology side of it, you're able to see where people have those stronger energies and those
Mhm.
negative energies, and that helps you to gauge where to map or where the mapping goes. All right, so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny to hear, not funny, but it is. Like I know I just said this, but how it all ties together. And I can see where okay, so I'm doing astrology. Well, you already start mapping energy there on accident in a
Right.
sense. You know, and accident's not the right word, but
No, but
so
I'm
it makes
already
sense.
doing it.
Exactly. So you're
Mhm.
already doing it, and then all of a sudden you start to find these trauma and these things being held. Well, then that pulls in the somatic trauma.
Right, right.
So that's interesting. Yeah, it's all three.
Yeah, and with the mediumship, I offer
Right.
that as a separate session, but it really comes through in everything.
Got
I
it.
can't help it.
Yeah, right. If you're doing all that other stuff and you're really getting in tune with a person, I
Right.
imagine that's going to creep up.
Right, but
Yeah.
there are things that if we were doing just a physical mediumship session, it would be me connecting with your body and figuring out kind of what I'm connecting with
Right.
and having some conversation about that so that you can kind of figure out where to go forward from there.
Got it.
I also have other psychic abilities that just they decide when they're
When and
gonna
where.
come.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get
In the line at the grocery store, you
right.
just never know. Yeah.
I get the message
Mhm.
in the way that it is going to be the most effective for you to hear it.
That makes sense.
So, whatever is going to make an impact for you,
Mhm.
that's how it's gonna come through for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Well,
Yeah.
who knows? I don't. People are like, how does that work? I'm like, I don't know if
I didn't come up with it.
Yeah, it's not my system.
Yeah, it's just how it happens. That's
Right, and
interesting.
so, when I am working in all of these mediums, no pun intended,
Mhm.
right, everything else kind of bleeds in.
Right.
And the newest thing that I've discovered is what I call an integrated guidance session,
Okay.
where I just put them all on the table.
Right.
Because there are a lot of people that come to me and say, I don't really know what I want, but I know I want to talk to you.
Right.
Or I'm having this issue and I don't know what you can do, but I think you can help me.
Mhm.
And so then we would start with the integrated guidance session.
Which would move through all the 4 different things.
Yeah, I use everything
Right.
in that session, and it helps us give a little bit of direction to where they might go to try to move forward from where they're stuck.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, and I'm so happy that you're helping people to the extent that you needed to move out of your Harry Potter room closet.
Right.
And come into this nice new space. It's fantastic, and
Thank you.
I love all the different ways that people can make themselves better. It's
Yeah.
truly the word wellness.
Yes.
As opposed to health, and I just applaud that. And we have a lot of good businesses in the community that do that, and now we have this, and
Yes.
it's just so awesome. And props on being one of the many Chelsea businesses to open up during a pandemic.
Thank you.
It's funny, this community has really been impressive to watch, and to see us adapt and thrive through all this stuff, and it's just crazy. Like, I don't know, people, if you've got the drive, there's no reason that anything should stop you. So
Right.
I love it.
Well, thank you.
So I gotta ask one silly question. I'm Scorpio,
Yeah.
and
I
was
think
just
we're
curious.
birthday twins, actually.
Oh, really?
Are you November 7th?
Yes.
So am I.
Well, that's super weird. Okay, I forgot about that. I do
I
remember
didn't.
it now. Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. So why in the world are we always the worst? That's my question.
We are not the worst,
Okay,
Terrace.
but every time I read a Scorpio horoscope, it's basically just like, you're conceited, you're power hungry, you care about nothing but money, you're not good in relationships, you're
Right.
mean to people. I'm just like, who is this guy? Why? And then you read through the other ones and it doesn't have any of that negativity.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, so there, just a little, I'll astro nerd for you for
Okay.
a minute. There are higher expressions of a
Okay.
sign and lower expressions of a sign.
Okay.
And with astrology, like memes and whatever, it's really fun to talk about the negative, right?
course,
the
that's
negative
true, yeah.
expression of the sign, just to make a joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
Scorpios are very loyal.
That's.
They are
yeah, I do
very
know.
perceptive. They are very intuitive.
Mm.
They are very knowledgeable about kind of the unconscious. They're very aware of those kinds of things.
You're making me feel a lot better here. I like all this positivity.
Right.
Yeah. This isn't normally what you read, as you
Right.
said. Yeah.
So that's kind of the higher expression of Scorpio. But the other thing that will affect how you come across is your rising sign.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that you, if you know your date, place, and time of birth, then you can pull up your chart and you see your rising sign. Your rising sign is how you come across to the world. I call it your cocktail party personality.
Oh, all right.
So it's what people think and see when they first meet you.
Understood.
And it can be very different than your sun sign.
I can see that. First impressions, people talk about them lasting, but at the same time, when you really get to meet somebody, it's always surprising to see how much that changes from
Right.
the first time you met them.
For sure.
Well, I feel like we could dig a deep, dark hole here,
We
start
could.
getting into astrology, so I'm gonna stop there. So thank you for making me feel better about my sign, though. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
And it's so funny, we're birthday twins. I completely forgot about that. But anyways, all right. Well, thank you. That is a wealth of information.
Yes.
And normally we would be doing this and we'd throw some stuff in the comments. Now, do you have a website people can go
I
to?
do. It's kellygoodell.com.
That's pretty easy.
It is
yes.
easy.
KellyGoodell.com, and you can also find her stuff on chelseamish.com as always. Thanks for having me over here today. And
Yeah,
showing me
thanks
your
for
space
coming.
and sitting
Thanks for
down.
talking to me.
A much better understanding of all that now.
Great.
Although I'm sure, as I said, it could go for a lot longer. We just don't have time today. So, anyways, thank you, and thank you to Grifka Marketing as always for facilitating and sponsoring, and thank you all for watching. And we'll see you guys next week. Have a great one.